Hello. In 2008, I was staffing one of our orientation weekend events. It was inflatables, and so the bouncy boxing, the jousting, the obstacle course, all of these things were taking place. And I was hanging out with one of my orientation team members and talking a little bit of smack to one another. And he challenged me to go against him in the obstacle course. And not one to back down from a challenge, I said yes. And I was, with very much determination, going to beat him to the other end of the obstacle course. And as another student counted us down and yelled, "Go," I jumped headfirst into that obstacle course. Except things did not necessarily go as I had planned. It was one of those situations where you think you're having a nightmare, but it's not really a nightmare. It's not that situation where you go to school and you find out you have no clothes on, or your teeth all start to fall out. It wasn't anything that I could wake up from and catch my breath and say, oh, none of that really ever happened, because it did happen. My wig fell off. About 2 years prior to this moment, I started losing my hair, and after going to see doctors, I decided that I needed to cut it short and start wearing wigs. And so at this time in my life, as what I look back on fondly and call the obstacle course disaster, I did not have a lot of people that knew what was going on with me, or that my hair was not real as they saw it. And so I was sitting at the beginning of the obstacle course. I didn't get very far because my wig fell off almost immediately, thinking to myself, oh crap, except crap was not the word that I was thinking. And I couldn't find it. I could not find it. And I was flailing around for about 20 seconds, which felt like an eternity, trying to find my wig, and realized soon that I was sitting on it. Grabbed it, put it on my head, just as a student jumped in to obviously find out why I never came out the other end with the other student. I finished the obstacle course, as to not look like a quitter, and made my way around to a group of students that were staring at me like, what just happened to you? And one of the students in the group knew that I wore wigs, and she made eye contact with me, and it was this unspoken understanding. She just nodded. And then we just both started laughing, which made the rest of the group obviously even more curious as to what just happened. So I slowly began to explain to them my situation. And it was in that moment that I realized that the only person that cared that I wore wigs was me. And so it was the first step, really, that I needed to take in order to become who I really was, and to be able to focus more on not worrying about what other people thought of me, because every single student at that moment and since then, and the people in my life, have not cared at all. And so as part of that, I really realized I have an awesome job and what I get to do and the people that I get to surround myself with. And it wasn't ever anything that I thought I was going to be doing if I look back on my childhood. I knew I wanted to be a teacher, and I'm glad that I'm still an educator in many ways. I remember growing up thinking I was going to be a teacher. My mom was a teacher, and my favorite thing to do with her was to go to Holcomb's, the teacher store. And I loved it there. And now I love office supply stores, so I really should have seen that moment coming. I'm more excited about a set of colored pens than shoes any day. And so I would go with her, and one time she let me buy my own grade book. And I had a classroom set up in my basement with a chalkboard, and I made up a fake class list of names, and I had imaginary assignments that I all gave them grades on. And I even failed some people. Like, I would pick that kid in class that I didn't like, and their name was on my imaginary class, and so he would get an F. And so that's how I processed it. And I went to college very much thinking that I was going to be a teacher one day, and started to get involved on campus. Really realized I liked being involved more than going to class, although I only ever intentionally skipped one class. And I sat down one day as a junior, and the director of residence life was having lunch with me, and she said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a teacher. And she said, have you ever thought about teaching in other ways? And there it was, the first real wrench in my plan of what I wanted to do and what I was going to do with my life. But after teaching middle school for 3 years, which I don't ever want to do again, I found my way back into student affairs and pursued my master's degree and have had a great job ever since. And so becoming who I am did not happen overnight in any way, shape, or form. It took a lot of time. It took a lot of practice. It took me looking at myself in the mirror and being okay who I was in every sense of the word. Having what I call my Elizabeth Shue hair, for any of you 80s movies fans, is a crowning moment. But I started to be okay with switching it up. I figured if Gaga can do it, I can as well. And so that was my approach to life, and that's how I wanted to do. Because honestly, the only person I was being real in front of for a long time was my cat. And if it's not about him being hungry or that imaginary bug on the wall, he doesn't care. And so I had to move on from that. And so two things I really took away from my own journey to being more authentic in who I was in my leadership. And the first one was to participate. And so I remember when I was teaching, I would do lessons and consistently in my head think about what was going to happen next. And so I was never participating in that moment with my students at times because I was always worrying about how to make it better. And it was more about me. And when you're fully participating in something, it has nothing to do with you. It's about everybody else that you're in the room with. And I remember being in a church youth group and going on a retreat, and there was a priest, his name was Father Larry Richards, and his catchphrase was, participate, don't anticipate, which drove us nuts when we didn't know a schedule and we were there for a weekend and we wanted to know, well, what's happening next? And I still use that now with my students, and I think it drives them equally as crazy. But nothing was more true than when I went to Lesotho, Africa, and I met a woman who was our host mother, May Ellen. And we were walking through the city on our first day, and she was holding my hand as we walked, and she looked at me and she said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yes, I'm okay." And she said, "Are you fine?" I said, "Yes, I'm fine." She said, "Do you love me?" And I looked at her and I was like, "Yes, I love you." And it was no pausing, nothing. And I realized that there was this woman, this stranger to me, who was basically taking me in, as well as the rest of the group of us, and saying, "I'm your mother, I'm here to take care of you." And she hugged me and she said, "Oh, I love you too." And I learned so much from her own authenticity and how she portrayed herself to us in that moment. And it made me just want to participate in every aspect of my time there. And I started to blog around this time and afterwards, of course, and really reflecting on everything that I was experiencing and realizing that the more I participated, the more full my reflection was going to be, and the more about myself I was going to learn and be able to share that with others. And I realized, oh, that's May Ellen, by the way. She was dancing to some hip-hop song with us. I realized that you can't force authenticity, and that's the second point. You can't force it to happen. You have to just simply allow it to happen. And when I was thinking about that, it reminded me of the book The Velveteen Rabbit, when the rabbit is talking to the skin horse about what it means to be real, because he didn't quite understand. And the skin horse talks to him about the fact that, it doesn't happen to people who break easily or that have to be very carefully kept, that by the time you are real, most of your hair has been lopped off. And I thought, oh, very fitting. And, you're shabby and your eyes are falling out and all of these things, but you can't be ugly, except if people don't understand. And that's when I realized I'm not a perfect person, and I embrace that. I'm not an expert. I continually love to learn. I continually love to embrace who I am. I'm very nerdy. I can be very awkward. This is some of my students and I at our dance marathon. They wanted to fit 10 of us into a photo booth and take this picture. And they're obviously very okay with themselves at this moment. And this was after about 6 or 7 hours of dancing. And they teach me how to be authentic, and I'm authentic with them. And we have these bonds of allowing ourselves to not be perfect in front of each other. And that's okay. And it's caused me a lot of time to reflect and understand. And especially as I work with college-age students who so many times I watch them try and fit themselves into a mold of what it means to be a leader, at least what maybe our society tells them it means to be a leader. And in reality, it just needs to be yourself. And so there's this struggle between the heart and the mind as to what we need to do and who we're supposed to act like and what I really want to be like. And I focus so hard on making sure that they understand that you can just put those two together and you'll be just fine. And sometimes I do these things and I don't know until later, or maybe I don't know at all if it ever meant anything. Case in point, I went on an alternative break trip one year to Cherokee, North Carolina. And I was with a group of students, and their game eventually was how many awkward moments can we catch Kathy in. And particular one was their favorite was we needed an oscillating fan and we didn't have one, so I stood and rotated to try and dry a wall space quicker. There's a picture of it floating around somewhere on Facebook, I'm sure. And so one of the students on the trip, she was a senior, and 3 weeks or so after the trip, I had a letter from her in my office. And she was joking around about some of the laughs we had had, and then started to explain to me in great detail that for a long time she hadn't felt like herself. and she was struggling with it by the time we had left for this trip. And at one point, during something ridiculous I'm sure I said or did late night, she rolled over in her bunk and she said, a tear streamed down her face, and she said, "It's good to be back." And it really caused me to reflect on my impact on that particular student in that time. And I know that there's those moments that I don't realize that what I'm doing and how I'm acting is going to shape the life of somebody next to me, or somebody that I pass on the street. But my reflection has to make me remember that that could happen at any moment. And so the way I act and the way I compose myself has to be authentic and it has to be real. And that reflection really led to a lot of change. And so on a daily basis, I get to interact and work with students, and I love every moment of it. And so some particular students that have influenced my life as much as they tell me I influence theirs. This is Pat. I met him when he was a freshman, and he is now a senior. He's going to be graduating in about a month and a half. When I told him I was talking about him today, he was very excited. Pat, we joke that we're twins because we can make a similar face and have these glasses, and I'm okay with that. And we do this at almost every event that we're together at. And it's just one of those things where I've watched Pat come in and want to do everything under the sun as a first-year student. And when he couldn't, he learned from that. And we had those conversations, and we worked that out. And he is now one of those seniors that I look at, and I think, you know exactly what you're doing. And he's happy with himself and happy with his leadership style and has grown so much as an individual. Bree is a current sophomore of mine that I work with, and Bree is one of those people that at a freshman, she was wise beyond her years. And I talk to her now, and she calls me a mentor, yet every day I learn about integrity and giving of yourself more from Bree than a lot of people that I know. I've also been fortunate enough to, for the past 3 or 4 years, work with a fraternity on campus, which is very new. And these are 3 of the gentlemen that I get to work with, Cody, John, and Brad. And I learn more about what it means to be an authentic woman working with a group of fraternity men than I ever did anywhere else. And so me understanding more about myself and what it means has in turn led to a lot of conversations about who they are and what it means to be a strong, balanced man in their fraternity. And I teach a first-year experience course, and Kate and Zach with the yellow print, they're former teaching assistants of mine. Tony's going to be my teaching assistant in the fall. And I get so excited every day about not only teaching first-year students and helping them realize their own potential, but I also get to teach these students how to teach that as well. And so one of the things that I've come to understand most about all of this is that every day I'm going to act in a certain way and I'm going to do certain things. And I work with students every day trying to show them the potential that I see in them. And in one particular incident, I remember collecting information from our orientation team. And one of the students was answering the question, what does it mean to be a yellow jacket, which is our school mascot? Or why are you proud to be a yellow jacket? And he wrote down multiple answers, crossing them out every time. And finally, all that I was left with at the bottom of the page was, because being here made me who I am. And it was in that moment that I realized that this student, who had been an orientation leader, I believe this was his 2nd year on our team, had come in not really knowing what it was all about. And after a year of experience, realized that he was becoming who he was. And in that moment, and in many moments since then, I also get to realize that who I am and who we all are and what we do every day impacts those around us. And I'm fortunate that my job means that I get to do that every day. Thank you.